All right, let's take a look at the global round of the headlines around the world, making stories this Friday. Let's first start off with the big story that we've been dealing with all week, the London terror attacks. 2 more people have now been arrested in connection with the terror attack in London. Police called these arrests significant. This is a turning point. So far, 9 people have now been arrested in the case. 1 woman was earlier released on bail. ISIS has claimed responsibility for the attack. U.S. President Donald Trump has demanded a make-or-break Friday vote on a new health care bill in the U.S. House of Representatives. The American Health Care Act is intended to replace parts of President Barack Obama's signature law called Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act. Thursday's vote was delayed because the opposition from some Republicans. He now says he wants to move on and vote whatever may be the result. Staying in the U.S., Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has directed U.S. diplomatic missions to identify populations warranting increased security and toughening the screening process for visa applicants. Tillerson ordered a mandatory social media check for applicants who've ever been present in so-called Islamic State territories. The U.S. has warned that the militant Islamic State group has stepped up its efforts in recruiting young people from the following countries: Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iraq. Speaking at the 10th Global Coalition meeting in Washington Wednesday, Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, said the U.S. will increase pressure on ISIS and al-Qaeda and will work to establish stability through ceasefires. Around 200 people have fled Islamic State-held town of HAWIJA to seek shelter in Kirkuk. The families were transported in military trucks about 20 kilometers south of Kirkuk to undergo security checks. They were later taken to a camp in the Lilan district. Former Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak walked free from a 6-year-long detention on Friday after relief from the apex court. Mubarak had been overthrown from power in Egypt 6 years ago after a series of people's revolutions, including the Arab Spring in the Middle East. The 88-year-old former leader spent most of his detention time undergoing treatment at a military hospital. Turkey's President Recep Erdogan has slammed the U.S. and the U.K.'s ban on electronic devices bigger than cell phones inside aircrafts in some Muslim-majority countries. Erdogan said the order had damaged mutual confidence, and he hoped the mistake would be corrected. He also said his country would preview its political and administrative ties with the EU after an April referendum. Taiwan's Constitutional Court has now begun a hearing a case that could make the island the first place in Asia to allow same-sex marriage. Campaigners for change gathered with rainbow flags outside the court in Taipei as a panel of grand justices began hearings over a disputed law that critics say is unconstitutional because it prevents unions between gay couples. The first draft of the bill was passed by Parliament in December. A South Korean military official on Friday said North Korea has maintained readiness to conduct a new nuclear test at any time. The U.S. and South Korea has been closely monitoring North Korea's Punggye-ri nuclear test site. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Friday refuted allegations that he made a donation to an educator at the center of an intensifying political scandal that has now gripped the country. A controversial nationalist school operator had said on an oath on Thursday that he received more than $9,000 in donations from Abe. China's defense ministry on Thursday called on Nepal's Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal. The talks come ahead of the first joint military exercise between Nepal and China. A 19-member delegation is accompanying the Chinese minister. General Chang is the first Chinese defense minister to visit Nepal in 16 years. South Korea next, where experts and workers raised a ferry that sank nearly 3 years ago. It killed more than 300 people. South Korea's Ministries of Oceans and Fisheries said the vessel will then be taken to a nearby port for more inspection. Many of those on board were students. The U.S.-born giant panda Bao Bao has finally returned home after spending a month at the China Conservation and Research Center. The 3.5-year-old Bao Bao was born in Washington, D.C. and has quickly adapted to new food and the new environment upon his return. Hong Kong is getting ready for elections this Sunday, March the 26th. A committee of around 1,200 people will elect the next leader of Hong Kong. Beijing's favorite, Carrie Lam, is the front runner, despite her plummeting popularity against her opponent, former Financial Secretary John Tsang. Oceania next, where New Zealand's Prime Minister Bill English has announced a push for free trade in his first major trade policy. New Zealand's $180 billion economy depends heavily on exports and thus favors the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Deal. The new policy includes funds for an expanded trade bureaucracy, which now includes new diplomatic posts in Dublin and Colombo. The New Zealand government is in the process of negotiating a trade deal with the Gulf states and the European Union, as well as seeking free trade agreements with China. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Delcy Rodriguez says one of its patrols accidentally crossed into Colombia after bordering a river changed course due to heavy rain. Venezuelan troops have now closed the border several times in a crackdown on smugglers. In 2015, it deported hundreds of Colombians on accusation of criminal activities. Well, the families of the victims of Germanwings' A320 jet gathered in a cathedral at the second anniversary of the tragedy. The jet crashed into a French mountainside back on March the 24th, 2015. The pilot allegedly flew the jet into the mountains deliberately in what is being dubbed as pilot suicide. All 150 people on board died. Global leader in smartphones and memory chips, Samsung Electronics, is now approaching a restructuring process. The founding family's heirs are seeking to solidify their control of the flagship unit of Samsung Group. Australian cricketers met Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, in the North Indian hill town of Dharamsala. The cricketers described their meeting with the Dalai Lama as amazing and unbelievable. Sports next, where the U.S. men's national team is in the final round of the 2018 FIFA World Cup qualifiers. The team is expecting a win in 3 points against Honduras. Today in San Jose, California, the team is entering these matches with 0 points. This has shrunk their margin of error as only 8 games are left in the round. The American qualifier Francis Tiafoe defeats Konstantin KRAVCHUK in 3 sets in the first round of the Miami Open. Tiafoe defeated Russian player KRAVCHUK by 7-5, 5-7, 6-1 in an opening round match in the Masters 1000 Series tournament. Tiafoe has now qualified for a second round match and will compete against Roger Federer.